opening prayer we have just recited reminded us the Bharat is not merely a geographical entity. It is our motherland, our source of identity, values, and inspiration. It calls upon us to approach our nation not only with pride but also with gratitude, humility, and a sense of responsibility. It is in this spirit that Disha Bharat has envisioned the My Bharat campaign, a journey to reconnect our youth with the timeless heritage of Bharat. Through a series of lectures by eminent scholars, historians, thinkers, and nation builders, we seek to inspire young minds to understand India's civilizational journey, appreciate its cultural richness, and contribute meaningfully to its future. Today's theme, Rise of Nationalism During the Freedom Movement, is both historically significant and deeply relevant to our times. The rise of nationalism was not merely a political awakening against colonial rule. It was the awakening of civilizational consciousness that united millions across regions, languages, and communities with one common purpose, the freedom and dignity of Bharat. If nationalism gave our forefathers the strength to win freedom, it must inspire today's youth to build a nation that is ethical, innovative, self reliant, and united. The responsibility of every generation is different, but the spirit of nation building remains eternal. To guide us through this important subject, we are deeply honored to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Anirban Ganguly. Dr. Anirban Ganguly ji is an eminent author, thinker, and chairman of the Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee Research Foundation, New Delhi. The foundation carries forward the vision of Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, one of the principal architects of modern India's national thought, who dedicated his life to strengthening India's unity, cultural self confidence, educational excellence, and national integration. His vision continues to inspire generations working towards a strong, united, and self confident Bharat. Sir, it is our privilege to have you with us today. Viewers, please join me in extending a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Anirban Ganguly ji. Anirban Ganguly ji, the virtual platform is yours.
Dhanyavad, Chetana. Thank you so much. And I would like to specially thank Disha Bharat and the Mythic Society. I had come on this platform, this very inspiring My Bharat platform, with a very noble, inspiring, and relevant theme. I was here 2 years ago, and I vividly remember the kind of engagement, the kind of positive thought and energy that this initiative exuded, especially because it linked the consciousness of nationalism, the consciousness of nationalism, the sense of Bharatvarsha with the youth and the future. And therefore, I think this is an extremely significant and an extremely relevant effort, initiative, and platform. I want to thank my friend Rajesh Padmar also, and everyone here associated with Disha for having invited me, and also for having accepted this slight change of timing that had to be, worked out. I'm extremely honored to be part of this effort. Friends, in a few days' time, we shall also be commemorating the Har Ghar Tiranga, Har Gaon Tiranga Abhiyan. It took so many decades for such an abhiyan, for such a movement to start. And right from the day one, right from the first year when this movement was initiated by Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, it elicited huge response across the country. there was a kind of apathy amongst a section towards our national symbols. National symbols which define our nationhood, which define our civilizational flow, which define our national consciousness. And therefore, efforts such as My Bharat, efforts such as Har Ghar Tiranga, Har Gaon Tiranga, reinforces that civilizational consciousness, reinforces the sense of nation and of nationhood amongst the not only the present generations, but it gives rise to values. It gives rise to a certain consciousness and enables it to crystallize for action in the future as well. We are passing through a very interesting phase, an interesting phase where there are challenges and possibilities. For example, there'll be some who will tell us, what can we do if the freedom fighters sacrifice themselves? For whom? I mean, they may not have sacrificed for us. They need not have done what they have done. They could have lived a comfortable life. What can we do if they decided not to lead a comfortable life and sacrifice themselves? Why should we remember them, or why should we commemorate them? So, well, this is a kind of, this is one genre of thought which is now evolving. You can call it wokeism, you can call it cultural Marxism, you can call it deconstructionism, whatever you may call it. But on the other hand, we have a very strong, robust, dynamic strand of thought, which clearly feels, and especially expressed by the youth also, which clearly feels that this was a very hard-earned freedom. For 100 years, for nearly 100 years, in fact, if one goes even earlier, it can be for 150 years, at various occasions, at various times, in various regions of this great country, people stood up against oppression and against revolt. So it was a very hard-earned freedom. Nobody gave it to us on a platter. Nobody, just signed an instrument of conferring freedom and we got it. Freedom was struggled for, it was demanded, it was insisted upon, and various strands of the freedom movement were active. You had non-violent, those who believed in non-violence. You had those who believed in satyagraha. And you had revolutionary nationalists who believed in armed struggle to achieve independence, to achieve freedom. For them, there was no sacrosanct method. Whatever method suited the earning of freedom, whichever method led us to freedom, that is the method that was to be followed. So you had thought leaders. You had thought leaders who spoke about decolonizing our thinking. You had educationists who started the national education movement, who wanted to completely free, colonize Indian education, focus on Indian languages, focus on Indian science, focus on Indian culture, get the best knowledge, the latest knowledge from across the world, but utilize that to free, unshackle Indian education from the grip of a Western foreign outlook and framework. So friends, if you look at it, if you look at the freedom struggle, or as this topic has been named, as this session has been named, the rise of nationalism during the freedom movement, perhaps India was the only country where you had an overarching freedom movement, a freedom struggle. You had an overarching political freedom struggle. And in that political freedom struggle, in that overarching umbrella, under that overarching umbrella, you had various strands which led to a comprehensive national awakening. So you had for example, the famous Bengal School of Art. You had Abanindranath Tagore to Nandalal Bose, who championed the Indian style of painting, who brought back the Indian techniques. You had Ananda Kumaraswamy, you spoke about Indian art, Indian architecture, Indian scriptures, the need to get back to revive the Indian architectural style, to preserve them and to ensure that in independent, in free India, those very styles would be utilized. You had stalwarts like Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, for some time Sri Aurobindo himself. You had Lokmanya Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai. You had later, at a later stage, Gandhiji himself, who championed a national education movement. And the national education movement had the focus of establishing national schools across the country, of imparting an Indian education and an education which would make you aware about India, about Bharat, the civilizational Bharat, Bharat's achievements and her future. And therefore, Sri Aurobindo's three principles of education says, one of the principles of education is from his principle of education is from the near to the far. Let us learn, let us absorb about our country first, about our civilization, our achievements, our traditions, our parampara, and then let us learn about the world, from the near to the far. When in 1916, when Gandhiji participated in the inauguration of the Banaras Hindu University, he gave a very strong speech which had shaken many of those present there. He said, education, the richness of Indian languages, education to be imparted in Indian languages. Sri Aurobindo, in his writings in the early phase of the Swadeshi period, writes about the necessity of imparting education in the mother tongue. So you have this entire strand. You have painters, you have poets, Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati. At a later stage, you have people like Gundappaji, who write about Indian culture, who write about the necessity to relook. You have people like K.C. Bhattacharya, who talk about the Swaraj in ideas, who talk about how cultural subjection is upon us and how we need to liberate ourselves, free ourselves from that cultural subjection. In the Calcutta University, you have someone like Ashutosh Mookerjee, father of Syama Prasad Mookerjee, who, while heading a university which was part of the official system, ensured very methodically, very systematically, and with great emphasis that the Calcutta University encourages education in Indian languages, that examinations, courses, and right up to PhD, started later by Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, can be taken in 1 month in one's mother tongue, starts the Bengali MA department, starts the first Pali department, and scholars like R.C. Majumdar, K.P. Jaiswal, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan are all given space in that university to do research with India, with Bharat as the center of that research and of that new awakening. So, friends, one can actually, and it is across India. If you go to on the other side, if you go to Western India, if you go to the South, and for a long time till 1911, Calcutta being the capital of India, a lot of activities focused in Calcutta. The Calcutta University very subtly, very quietly, very solidly becomes a platform for education and for research in Indian history, Indian languages, and in Indian culture. You have the Bengal School of Art, where a large number of these young trainees who learn, they learn Western techniques in art, but then they develop their own techniques inspired by Indian tradition and civilization. And you have in Shanti Niketan in 1920-21, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore establishing the Vishwa Bharati, where all these stalwarts from across the country come, find an ambience which is conducive to new thought, to new work, new research, and new engagement with Indian tradition and parampara at the center of it. So when we talk about rise of nationalism, in the freedom movement, we have to keep this background in mind, and this is unique to India. I don't think any other freedom movement across the world had such a rich variety. You have Sister Nivedita, you have Ananda Kumaraswamy, you have Radha Kumud Mukherjee, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee. Radha Kumud Mukherjee delivers his lectures on Samrat Ashok, on Emperor Ashok in the Lucknow University. And then that appears in a book form. It's the first time in modern India that the Ashokan legacy is again brought back in the mainstream. You have Radha Kumud Mukherjee, who writes The Fundamental Unity of India in 1914, where he says how the tradition of pilgrimage, of Tirtha in India has woven in the national consciousness across this land. And it is not, this national consciousness is not it's not a gift of the British. It's not something artificial. It was there for centuries. It has been evolved to the footfalls of the pilgrims. K.V. Rangaswamy Iyengar also writes this. And the Maharaja of Baroda starts a Baroda-oriented series where number of such scholars write and they produce original research. They write, you have Nilakanta Shastri later on, a little later on in the 1930s also, who start, and then the concept of, Greater India, which is now, obviously that term is now out of use, because Samkhya was a concept which was very hegemonistic. But the scholars who spoke about Greater India were not hegemonistic. They spoke about Hindu colonies in Southeast Asia. And so research starts in that also. For example, the Chola copper plates, which were brought back, reinstated to India about 2 months ago, when Prime Minister Modi went to Netherlands. These Chola copper plates were lying in London in the Kern Institute for more than 100 years. And in the Chola copper plates, you are clearly given a description of that period, of the Chola Empire, of its administration, the way it conducted itself. And then you have a record there of how the emperor of the Sri Vijaya Empire requests land in Nagapattinam. They want to build a Buddha Vihar there. And Rajendra Chola, one of the greatest Hindu monarchs, confers the revenue of a few villages so that the Nagapattinam Buddha Vihar can be built and can be maintained. So, and then Leiden, R.C. Majumdar goes to Leiden at the Kern Institute. He does his research, and that allows him to write the Hindu colonies of the Far East. Nilakanta Shastri follows. So, if you look at this 22 decades, a rich contribution which went parallelly to the political, which built up the national consciousness. This was one part. 1857 is a cutoff point, sort of. But if you look at before that, you look at the Vellore Revolt, I believe it was 1808, the Vellore Revolt. Then the Hood, the Santhal Revolt, the Santhal withdrawal of 1855-56, just before 1857. So if you look at 1757 onwards, after the Battle of Plassey, there was a continuous effort at fighting against and trying to overthrow. A continuous attempt was there. Even after 1857, for the next 50 years, there were continuous efforts made. And therefore, one can never say that 1757 and then 1857 happened. There was nothing in between. There was a constant attempt. And for those who have joined us here, there are those who are interested in history, have written, are writing. I would urge this is a project that can be undertaken of trying to put together the number of revolts that took place post 1757 to 1947, ending with the naval revolt in 1946. I think it's going to be a mind-boggling array, numbers of revolts. And one then realizes that Indian polity, Indian society was complex. It was never dormant. It never accepted subjection. During the Swadeshi period, Rabindranath Tagore writes about, he speaks about Atma Shakti. And he says, Swadeshi Samaj, how Atma Shakti and Atma Nirbharta. He says we were a society. We were never dependent on the government. We were never dependent on the king to do something for us. His duty, kartavya, and society was self-reliant and self-motivated. And society maintained itself with support from the king. But subjection has made us dependent on the ruler. And therefore, we have to reawaken Atma Shakti. If you read Dharampalji, civil disobedience, even before the period of Gandhiji, you will see how we were as a civilization conditioned to get our things done as a society. So one has to look at this background. And if one then comes to the Swadeshi period, one realizes that it was not something offhand. Gandhiji came in 1915. Before Gandhiji, you had this entire revolt. You had the Swadeshi period. And in the Swadeshi period, you had also personalities, stalwarts like Jatin Mookerjee, Baba Jatin, the Battle of Balasore. He led the armed revolt. You had characters, you had personalities like Rashbihari Bose, who in Delhi, along with his accomplice Basant Biswas, threw bomb at the British Viceroy Lord Hardinge. And Rashbihari Bose then flees to Japan. And for the next 40 years, he continues his struggle from Japan, one of the most wanted revolutionaries. In Japan, he builds up the IN, the Indian National Army. He mobilizes public opinion across Southeast Asia. He becomes president of the Hindu Mahasabha as well. This is something which many who speak about Rashbihari Bose wouldn't like us to remember. In 1942, he is president of the Hindu Mahasabha of the Southeast Asian chapter of the Hindu Mahasabha. So a very complex, a very rich, and very inspiring web one can make. They are all products of that Swadeshi period. Many of them, when they got into revolution, they were in their 20s. They were in their early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And their one focus, the only focus of their life, was the independence and freedom of India. Now, this is a very wide topic, and therefore I just stick to one aspect, one dimension, which is extremely relevant today as well. And as we lead up to the 15th August, it becomes extremely relevant, and it continues to remain relevant. I'll very briefly go over this, and then we can take a few questions. In about Vande Mataram, we are celebrating 150th year of Vande Mataram. And if you recall, of debate, I mean, it's something that we are not witnessing for the first time. In 1938, when Bankim Chandra's Rishi Bankim centenary was being celebrated, was being observed across India, especially in Bengal, the Muslim League opposed Vande Mataram. They had a problem with Vande Mataram. Suddenly, it was a political demand because Vande Mataram, if we go to the right at the beginning, in the origin, when Bankim composed Vande Mataram, I'm sure you're all aware that he did it in Murshidabad. He was posted there at that time. And in Murshidabad, you had a principality, you had a large principality known as Lalgola. Lalgola still exists as a district town. A portion of that, it was a huge, very influential, a very well-established principality in those days. And Maharaja of Lalgola, Jogindranath Roy, was one of a great benefactor. He was a great patron, benefactor of Indian culture, of language, especially of Bengali literature and Bengali writings and research, etc. He supported a large number of people. Bankim went and stayed there as a guest for about 3 months. He wanted to withdraw himself from active work for a while after his spat with the British officer. And he was in a sort of a vairagya. He was undergoing a phase of vairagya at that time. And I would urge all of you who can to visit Lal Gola. The Kali Mandir is still there. The Durga Mandir doesn't exist. The Jagadhatri Mandir doesn't exist anymore. But the forest that Bankim describes, the forest with which, the description with which Anandamath starts, that forest is still there. The river is still there. And just a few miles away is Bangladesh today, which used to be undivided Bengal in those days. And the Kali Mandir, where Bankim would meditate, and Kali, seeing Ma Kali's Murti, he was inspired to compose Vande Mataram and Anandamath. And in Anandamath, you have that famous description of Mother India, Bharat Mata as she was, Bharat Mata as she is today, and Bharat Mata as she will become in the future. And that Bharat Mata as she is today, in those days, under subjection, under bondage, chained. So you have this very unique Kali temple in Lal Gola, where Mother Kali is actually chained. Shrinkhalita Kali, it's known as Shrinkhalita Kali. And that was the vision of Mother Kali, of Bharat Mata in bondage, that triggered the composition of Vande Mataram and Anandamath. He started writing there. And in those days, just after it was the period when the famous sannyasi Vidroha had taken place. When sannyasis revolted against exploitation, against the entire, it was a revolt against the East India. And a lot of those sannyasis would pass through that corridor, would pass through Lal Gola and on to other parts of North India. And that is where Bankim met a number of them. And that is where Vande Mataram, Vande Vandini Mataram, it was a mantra that Bankim heard when these successes were passed. So one can imagine it was a Maghi Purnima night, peak winter, when these sannyasis had gathered in the precincts of that Kali Mandir, that courtyard, that compound is still there. And they were doing their penance, their meditation, their chanting, their sadhana. Bankim also was present there. He was put up at the Lal Gola Maharaja's guest house, just a few yards away. The guest house still stands. It's in a very dilapidated condition. Now at least there is hope that we will be able to salvage, create a special zone of that area perhaps. And Bankim heard that mantra, Vande Vandini Mataram. And then through his discussion, through his talks. So if you go through Anandamath, if you go through that novel, Sri Aurobindo has translated 13 chapters, but obviously there are other translations also. If you go through that, if you go through Anandamath, you'll see that Bankim had actually was fantastically aware of what was going on. And he speaks about the situation of famine. He speaks about exploitation. He speaks about the richness of Bengal as a province. He speaks about the challenges. He speaks about the history of that period. He goes back slightly more back, and he speaks about the entire situation, about how people were exploited, and how they revolted. So it's a description of that age, of that era. And mind you, till 1874, 1875, Bengal was a majority province. It was only when parts of it were given to Assam, that Bengal lost its Hindu majority. And it became, and then later on, the entire history that goes on, the Muslim League, etc. But this was the background of Vande Mataram, of Anandamath. And as I said, when Bankim's centenary was being celebrated, the Muslim League opposed Vande Mataram. We'll come to that a little later. But when we speak about national Indian freedom movement, this nationalism was awakened by Bankim. It was awakened by Anwar. And she, as very beautifully Sri Aurobindo says, instant politic inspirer and political guru of the new spirit with leading the nation to resurgence and independence. Inspirer and political guru. That was Rishi Banki. And very interesting, if you look at Swami Vivekananda, we say that Swami Vivekananda's Colombo to Almora was staple reading for the revolutionaries. And it was on 14 February 1897. Bankim says Vande Mataram as we sing Vande Mataram. Tvam hi Durga Dasha Praharanadhari. You are Durga. You are. Tvam hi. You, the motherland. You, Mother India. You, Bharat Mata, are Durga for us. You are Saraswati for us. You are Lakshmi for us. In the sense, you are the goddess in whom all these goddesses for us, and so therefore we worship you. Beautiful translation that Sri Aurobindo makes when Bhavananda is asked, who is this mother? Who is this mother that you're singing about? So then he says, this is the motherland. Janani Janma Bhumishcha. We know no other mother. We have no relations. We have no family. Except Vivekananda says in 1897, 14 February 1897 in Madras, India, he says, for the next 50 years, this alone shall be our keynote. This our great Mother India. Let all other vain gods disappear for the time from our minds. This is the only God way. So one clearly sees a parallel. Rishi Bankim composes Vande Mataram, writes Anandamath. Swami Vivekananda is the first representative, the first symbol, the first articulator of that Tvam hi Durga Dasha Praharan. It is only this Mother India, the only God which is awake. Let us worship her for the next 50 years. And it's a very interesting parallel historian MyBHARAT was drawn that it was exactly 50 years after this, in February 27, he says, 3rd February, Swamiji delivers it on 14 February 1897, and he says, for the next 50 years, let us God, Mother India. Before that, Bankim has written in 1875, Tvam hi Durga Dasha Praharananda. Kamala Maladala Viharini, everything, you are everything for us. Vani Vidayini, you are for us. Who is you? You, Bharat Mata, Mother India. Swamiji says in 1897, he tells us the same thing. He was a product of the day. In 1901, when Swami Vivekananda visited Dhaka, that was his last visit. He took his mother to East Bengal, and then from there they came down to visit Kamakya at the Shaka. In Dhaka, a number of young revolutionaries met him. They wanted a direction from him. And he said, we have to develop the spirit of Rani Jhansi. You have to start a library movement across the country, a library movement, develop the spirit of Rani of Jhansi. And like Anandamath's Santan Dal, like Bankim's Anandamath, which describes how the Santans fought to liberate the country, you have to, like Santans of Anandamath, spread out across the country. So obviously, Swamiji was, Bankim was an integral part of his growing up, of his education. And it was on 23rd February 1947 that the then Prime Minister of England, Clement Attlee, announced in the House of Commons the decision of the British government to quit India. 50 years after Swamiji says, this alone shall be our keynote. Let us worship her. She's the only God which is awake. Friends, I told you about, therefore, when at the introduction, we spoke about civilization and about Bharat Mata as an entity. Sri Aurobindo says Bankim's Vande Mataram as a reviving mantra, which is creating a new India. And it has given us, awakened in us an all-absorbing passion for the mother and her service. Bankim gave us the vision of the mother, Sri Aurobindo says. The Bharat Mata vision was there, but it was diluted. It had got lost. It had dissipated. And suddenly somebody sang Vande Mataram. Please read Till Dayan Aurobindo's small opuscule, where he writes about how someone sang Vande Mataram, and that entire vision of the mother of Bharat Mata came across, and it was crystallized. In 1907, when he was writing of Vande Mataram, as a great song which has become the national anthem of United India. In 1907, everyone sang the whole of Vande Mataram. There was no Khandita Vande Mataram which was sung. In 1905, a Vande Mataram Sampradaya was formed. Eminent journalist Hemendra Prasad Ghosh, who was a very close associate of Sri Aurobindo, was the secretary of that. Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore was the president. And the Vande Mataram Sampradaya's objective was to spread the singing of Vande Mataram across the country. And the whole of Vande Mataram, they took out Pravat Pheris across Bengal, singing the whole of Vande Mataram day after day. In his Bhavani Mandir in 1905, August, Sri Aurobindo writes, though he wrote it unsigned, that same concept where Swamiji says in 1897, this alone shall be our keynote, let us worship Mother India. Bankim writes, Vande Mataram, he establishes that vision, re-establishes that vision. Sri Aurobindo in his Bhavani Mandir is writing, the mother country as a mighty Shakti composed of the Shaktis of all the millions of units that make up the nation. And India is not a piece of earth, nor a figure of speech, nor a fiction of the mind. Now, obviously, when we read this, when we were Gen Z, this appealed to us. It was something which hit us. I just hope it keeps appealing to Gen Z. I mean, that's the kind of education that some are obviously trying to push, not all. Then he says, India is a Shakti, a Bhavani Bharati, a living unity of the Shaktis of 300 million people. So you have Bankim, you have Swamiji, you have Sri Aurobindo, all in one line, articulating the same vision at various turning inflection points in our history. Now, you know, some have also, there's an interesting history that one gets. For example, it was in 1906 in Barisal, which is a province today in Bangladesh. At these provincial conferences taking place across the country. So the Bengal Provincial Conference was held in 1906 in Barisal. For the first time, blood was spilled for singing Vande Mataram. That was in Barisal in April in 1906. There was this young volunteer, anti-Carlyle Circular Society was established. Carlyle was the additional chief secretary of Bengal. He had passed a circular saying that chanting of Vande Mataram cannot be done. Students cannot chant Vande Mataram, and anyone chanting Vande Mataram in public spaces would be fined. The anti-circular Carlyle Circular Society came up. Young volunteers were there. They marched in Barisal as volunteers. They participated and they marched singing Vande Mataram very disciplined way. There was no chaos. There was no anarchy. They marched in a disciplined way, and the British police pounded them because they sang Vande Mataram. Senior leaders were there. I'm being very short, you know, because Barisal Conference itself is a very unique part of our history which has been forgotten. And there was this young boy known as Chittaranjan Goa, who was the associate of Sri Aurobindo and was a great supporter of the Swadeshi movement. He facilitated many leaders. His son, Chittaranjan, kept uttering Vande Mataram, and he was, with each blow, he was nearly left for dead. He fainted, and yet he nearly fainted, and he yet continued to chant Vande Mataram. He was badly bruised, would have perhaps died. So it was in Barisal conference that the first time the police physically assaulted, the British police physically assaulted people for having chanted Vande Mataram. And in 1937, decades after that, Chitran came out publicly to appeal against the detonation of Vande Mataram. He says you cannot sing Vande Mataram in a trunk. It's a beautiful, very a very moving appeal that he gives out. He says, I was the first one to plead for Vande Mataram, and I'm appealing to you. I'm appealing to the Congress not to truncate, not to dismember, not to mutilate Vande Mataram. A very moving appeal he gives. He says, the more the constables belabored me and begged me, stop, stop, I shouted Vande Mataram loudly and with more vigor due to the influence of this great mantra. When I first shouted Vande Mataram, I was quite ready for death. But instead of that, lathi after lathi began to fall on my body. They seemed to me to be the blessings of my motherland. Though my body was flooded with blood and though a part of the pond in which I was thrown became red with blood, the severe physical sufferings could not demoralize. So today, when some say there is a discussion going on why should we sing Vande Mataram, those who are very comfortable, parliament, in their jobs, secured jobs, who have not had to do anything to earn this freedom, not a single law. Nothing. I mean, some Swadeshi, extra, far off memory for them. They are debating today. Why should there be a punishment if I refuse to sing Vande Mataram? So anyway, that is an altogether debate. But I thought Chittaranjan Goa is also again talking to us on the pages of history. And this is what he had done wrong. He came back 3 decades later to again take a stand and say, don't do it. But obviously the Congress failed and mutilated. Bipin Chandra Pal, another figure whom we have forgotten in his writings, The Soul of India, he speaks about how our land is not merely, it is a mother country for us. It is essentially, it's not a poetical imagination, he says. It's essentially a religious emotion also. For us, we worship the mother, religious in that sense. Janani Janmabhumi, or mother country. We say Jani Janmabhumi, the West says mother country. For us, she's just mother. She's she's mother for us. And it was an intimate and palpable sense. He says that we have actually lost the sense of that meaning, the essence of that word. People say in poetical term, it's an imagination. It is not an imagination. Bipin Pal says it is a description. It is a very tender and beautiful, that description for us. We feel that, he says. And then he goes on to say, he says how, now you see the parallel with Swami, with Rishwanki. Bipin Chandra Pal goes into a detailed discussion and then he says, Goddess Durga, this perfected type of nationhood. Durga symbolizes the soul of national life and unity. How? With her 10 hands, she joins all the 10 points of the compass in her, symbolizing the territorial unity of the nation's body. Her 10 hands also symbolize the unity of the whole globe, the terrestrial interrelations and unity. Our unity is not detached from global unity, and that's why Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. When we speak about Indian unity, when we speak about Durga as Bharat Mata, her unity of her 10 hands also symbolizes global unity, interconnectedness. And then he goes on, there's a very beautiful description which is similar to that of Sri Aurobindo's, which is similar to that of Bankim. Bipin Chandra says, this mother is the spirit of India. This geographical habitat of ours is only the outer body of the mother. You read Sri Aurobindo's speeches on education and politics. He says this. The earth that we tread on is not a mere bit of structure. Bhavani Bharati, Bhavani Mandir, Sri Aurobindo writes. It is the physical embodiment of, Behind this physical and geographical body There is a being, a personality, the personality of the mother. Our history is the sacred biography of the mother. Our philosophies are the revelations of the mother's minds, of the mother's mind. Our arts, our poetry, and our painting, our music and our drama, our architecture and our sculpture, all these are the outflow of the mother's diverse emotional moods and experiences. Our religion is the organized expression of this. The outsider, the outsider is India. The outsider sees her as a mere bit of earth and looks upon her only as a geographical expression and entity. But we, her children, know her even today as our father and their father had done before for countless generations as a being, as a manifestation of Prakriti, as our mother and the mother of our race. And we have always and do still worship her as such. Beautifully moving. He says that our ancestors, our fathers and their fathers before us, before them, also recognize this, identified with our land as mother, as Bharat Mata. So it's not something which has suddenly been conjured, imagination. Bankim is Bipin Pal is saying, sorry, it is not imagined, it is felt. It is something that has been passed on to us from generation to generation. If it was imagined, it would have not been, it would not have a life that it can be passed on from generation to generation. So, one can really go on and on. There are many interesting points in this entire discussion and debate on Vande Mataram. Look at Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati, who translated Vande Mataram in Tamil in 1905. Between 1897 to 1909, Vande Mataram Anandamar was translated in Maratha, Marathi, Kannada, Gujarati, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam. Subramanya Bharati translated Vande Mataram in 1905. And he and Sri Aurobindo were staunch nationalists. And Subramanyam Bharati, not only that, he brought out two Tamil versions of Bankim's poem. And he wrote his poem on Bankim's masterpiece. Subramanyam Bharati writes a poem on Vande Mataram in February 1906 in this journal called Chakravartini. And his poem on Bankim's masterpiece, translated from English, if you read. When impenetrable darkness enveloped land, stifling its knowledge, came in Vande Mataram, rising as the sun on the Bay of Bengal. So those especially in the south, Dravidian, the Dravidian narrative, E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar's followers, they will say, so
I think there is some network issue with this. We will wait for 1 or 2 minutes for him to get connected. Before that, I would like to announce tomorrow's two special invitations for all of you. The first is under our My Bharat, My Responsibility campaign. We have a special morning session for students from 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. And we encourage students, parents, and teachers to join us as we learn from inspiring personality and discuss themes that nurture responsible citizenship. We warmly invite every young Bharatiya to be a part of this initiative. And tomorrow evening, 5th August at 7 p.m., we continue our My Bharat live lecture series with Sri Rajat Sethi, eminent author and thinker, who will speak on the theme social reforms during the freedom movement. Let us understand how social reform became the moral strength behind India's freedom movement and why its message remains relevant even today. So we will wait two more minutes for Anirbanji to join. Yes, yes, Anirbanji, please.
Am I audible? It suddenly got disconnected. I think there was a slight hitch. So, this is basically what one can actually go on and on, but we have to remember that there was this entire, when you talk about nationalism. Abhi to aa raha hai? Am I audible?
Yes, see, yes, you are audible.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. So I was giving that background. Then let us. I just conclude now. Because one can actually go on and on. Now, a number of issues were raised at that time. So the debate that we are seeing on Vande Mataram today is not something new. It happened even when in 1937-38, when there was a huge opposition to Vande Mataram. The Congress Working Committee decided to sing a truncated Vande Mataram after 30 years having sung the full song under pressure from the Muslim League. Even that did not appease Jinnah, because who said that even a truncated Vande Mataram is not acceptable to us. And a large number of, a solid group of scholars in those days wrote a counter to this on why Vande Mataram should be sung whole and not half. It was an organic song. And among the stalwarts who wrote at that time was a very senior doyen of Indian journalism, Ramananda Chatterjee, editor of the Modern Review. He goes on in a very detailed way to speak about, he says that he gives, he says that to those who say that it is a violent song, he says that in real politics, a nation has to be armed. A nation has to be able to secure itself. So here it is the vision of India which is prepared, ready to ward off her enemies. Ripudala Varinim. Dashapraharana Dharinim, ready to ward off enemies. Ripudala Varinim. And then he says that, to those who say it is idolatrous, there are many who don't believe in Murti Puja, but they have no problem in singing Vande Mataram, and then he gives examples. To Nehru, who said that, the words were difficult. These are all Sanskrit words, and it is very difficult. One cannot understand, because Nehru read Anandamath Vande Mataram in 1937. He had not read it before that. So he says that he writes, Ramananda Chattopadhyay writes, as for the occurrence of difficult words in the song, the difficulty will vary according to the degree of the hearer's ignorance of knowledge of Sanskrit and of Sanskritic vernaculars. And then he goes on to say, he says, in expressing any high Indian ideals in any Indian language, the use of some Sanskrit words is indispensably necessary. You will have this because the base of Indian languages is Sanskrit. And he says, unless a national song is to be strictly, confined to material things, you need to have an ideal. You need to have a vision in a national song. And then he goes on, he says the genius of India's literature and culture was essentially allied to the genius of Sanskritic literature and culture. Goes on. And very interestingly, a number of arguments are given here, beautifully written. And then he says that, this song will say that it's a communal song. He says that to those who say this, there is no mention in it of Muslims or of any religious community. This is very interesting. Neither in the song nor in Anandamath, in the novel, is there any aspersion on a community. The existence of an enemy party may suppose to be implied in the expression Ripudala Varini. But in the previous line, now when we sing Vande Mataram, we say, Koti Koti Kanta. The original is Sapta Koti Kanta. And then we say, obviously later on we became Koti Koti Kanta. Sapta Koti 70 million throats. He says 70 million throats of the votaries of the motherland. In 70 million throats, we are singing Vande Mataram. These 70 million in those days is the total population of the province of Bengal, including Bihar and Odisha, for which the song was written at the time of its composition, comprised all religious communities who all bow down to the motherland. So Bankim is saying, Ramananda Chattopadhyay is saying in Bankim's Vande Mataram, Sapta Koti Kanta, he doesn't differentiate. He doesn't say Dvikoti Hindu Kanta. He says Sapta Koti Kanta Kala Kala Ninada Karale. So it is the combined 70 million voice of the people of that province who are echoing, who are singing Vande Mataram. And therefore, the Muslims cannot be an enemy party in that song. And the entire revolt, the Sannyasi revolt, was directed against the English East India Company troops. Therefore, if there is any enemy definitely alluded to in the song, these are the troops of the British company that are the enemy. So what I'm saying is, in the rise of nationalism during the freedom movement, the anthem that played that galvanizing role had itself to face such challenges. You had voices of negation. At the same time, you had very strong voices who spoke for it, who explained to the people, to the country, to the political leadership, to those who opposed what that song essentially means in our national life and in our struggle for freedom. So I think today, when we are observing this 15 days, we see that same scenario being played out today in independent India after 75 years of independence having achieved. And in that context, when we speak about the rise of nationalism during the freedom movement, this entire past debate, past discussion on Vande Mataram is as relevant as it was then, as it was then, it is as relevant today as well. This is something which I wanted to share with you. And let us try means and remember that national life. Let us try and remember this is something which I want. Someone like Rizaul Karim, a very well-known journalist of that period, came out openly opposing the Muslim League. And he said, he describes best the essence of Vande Mataram in our national life. He says that every masterpiece in the world's history, any masterpiece or any song, has the role of awakening a sleeping people. It has a role of infusing energy in a lifeless race. It has the role of providing succor and solace to a completely depleted people. It has the role of infusing new life in a people about to die. Vande Mataram and Bankim's Anandamat and in it Vande Mataram plays that role, and therefore in the history of the world, it is one of the greatest songs ever produced by humanity in human history. This is not something which we are saying. We will obviously say, but it is something someone like Rizaul Karim. And his book was out of print, long out of print, till we rediscovered and started distributing, obviously in Bengali. So friends, thank you very much for this. I really thank Disha, Bharat and everyone for having invited me here. Let us continue this discussion. Let us continue this exploration. Let us continue this engagement with the past, a past which is a living past, a past which has a lot of message, symbolism for our struggles today. It is a past which directly connects us to our future and will lead us there as a great nation, as Bharat Shakti, as Bharat Vishwaguru. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anirban Ganguly. That was a very inspiring, insightful, deeply inspiring lecture. Your reflection have reminded us that nationalism is not merely an emotional expressed on special occasions. Your insights have transformed Vande Mataram from a patriotic expression into a lifelong inspiration for nation building. So, the best learning happens when curiosity meets wisdom. So, let us now move into the question and answer session where we have the privilege of interacting with Dr. Anirban Ganguly ji. If I may, I'll begin with the first question on behalf of our youth. Dr. Ganguly, Vande Mataram invokes reverence for the motherland, as you told. How can we encourage young Bharatiyas to move beyond merely saying these words and instead reflect their values through service, excellence, integrity, and responsible citizenship?
The essence of Vande Mataram needs to be explained and passed on from generation to generation. It's a song that appeals to every generation, that can appeal to every generation. It's an anthem, it's a song that can appeal to every generation across generations also. And in that, it's the India that we wish to see is ingrained in the words of that song. There is an outer part of it, there is an inner part of it. So anything you speak about self-reliance, you speak about national strength, you speak about national prowess, about growth, about becoming a major power, the younger generation will find a lot of resonance in these words. It is just that it has to be placed in a context before them. One has to really, point out how youngsters sung this song and liberated and moved towards freeing India. It was a song, it was a mantra which never weakened. In this way, one has to very consciously pass it on and explain and engage with the younger generation.
Okay, the second question is, many young people today receive information from social media rather than books. How can they distinguish between information, opinion, and authentic history while developing an informed understanding of Bharat?
Chetnaji, I think the youngsters are quite aware. They have that awareness about, obviously there's a lot that is also comes across to us very intelligently made on social media and which is authentic also. But there's a lot which is trash, which is not correct, which also comes across. So obviously there is no alternative to reading books, to making a selection, to deciding, to making a selection, reading, engaging with ideas, both for so there is to encourage more and more that the habit, the tradition of reading books never die out. At one point of time, we are in a technology advanced. There's short reels, there's Facebook, there is Insta, there's all that. But this engagement with books should only be intensified. It is only then that one can really also develop the faculties, the qualities, and especially that criteria judgment, developing more articulate.
Okay, so the next question is on Gen Z. If the youth of the freedom movement were remembered for securing India's independence, what should today's Gen Z aspire to be remembered for by the year 2047?
What kind of India do they want? What kind of India do we want? We say we want Vikasit Bharat. A Vikasit Bharat which is equal to the major powers of the world, which global power play, which can assert itself, a power to which a power up to organization and people look up to. So what kind of Bharat do we want? Because this is a preparatory for 47. And it is going to be beyond 2047 that Gen Z is going to lead. So for Gen Z, this is a preparation. And what kind of Bharat do we want? Do we want a Bharat which is driven by the grammar of anarchy that Baba Sahib Ambedkar spoke about? No, we want about grammar of anarchy. What kind of Bharat? What kind of institutions? And more importantly, how do we want to see Bharat in the world? As a satellite nation or as a civilization? It was the powerful civilization across the world, with a civilizational consciousness, a civilizational state. We want that kind of Bharat. So I think these next few decades, 2 decades, there must be intense reflection and manthan as well as preparation for that. The destiny of Bharat has been articulated, Swamiji to Sri Aurobindo to so many others, Netaji Subhash, so many others have articulated. And please let us remember, all of them in their era were Gen Z when they articulated these things. So it is that Bharat we want. And if it is that Bharat we want, what is the question?
Thank you. Thank you, Anirbanji. Before we conclude this enriching interaction, my request one final message from you, especially for the youth of Bharat who are watching this program across our digital platforms. Your words definitely will undoubtedly inspire many young minds.
You know, it's very difficult to give a message, but I mean, to give a what I have felt is engage with ideas. Engage with ideas which are liberating, ideas which infuse a deep sense of energy and belongingness to this land, a rootedness. Those ideas are there. It's there in our past corpus. Many of the leaders who are not dead, they live and they continue to live through their expressions. They're there. They're there. Can we engage with them and evolve a new sense, a sense which is based on a solid Sanatan foundation, a foundation which is unshakable. I think that is the major challenge. That is the major task before us. Let us engage with these stalwarts, with these icons, with these thought leaders who are integral part of life, of our civilization life, and then build up the edifice of the future, which is based on solid Sanatan foundation. It's a task which each can do at their levels. Many are doing differently. Even if you are engaging with technology, you are engaging with challenges, with new thought. At the backdrop, keep this base, keep this background of those who have already built up this narrative of Bharatvarsha, who have actually described, felt it. What is that narrative? How do we wish to express it in the years ahead?
Thank you. Thank you, Ganguly. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, your time, and your inspiring
Thank you very much.
So it has been a privilege to have you with us today. Thank you. Viewers, before we conclude, once again, a special invitation for all of you. First, under our My Bharat, My Responsibility campaign, we have a special morning session for students from 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. And we encourage students, parents, and teachers to join us as we learn from inspiring personalities and discuss themes that nurture responsible citizenship. So we warmly invite every young Bharatiya to be a part of this initiative. And tomorrow evening, 5th August at 7 p.m., we continue our My Bharat live lecture series with Sri Rajat Sethi, eminent author and thinker, who will speak on the theme Social Reforms During the Freedom Movement. Let us understand how social reform became the moral strength behind India's freedom movement and why its message remains relevant even today. So today's lecture is available on the Disha Bharat Facebook page. We request you to share it with your family, friends, students, and colleagues so that these meaningful conversations reach every corner of our nation. please like, follow, and subscribe to Disha Bharat, YouTube, Instagram, and other social media platforms. Let's always remember, the deeper our roots, the higher we rise. The better we understand our heritage and ancestry, the more secure, confident, and brighter our future becomes. Thank you for being a part of the My Bharat campaign. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.